Hello everybody, Prowl here, and today I have a super interesting video for you about copper, and I think new information that very few people, if anybody, really knows about in terms of the best way to oxidize copper. You're going to see a lot of copper here behind me in a lot of different configurations, and that's because I've done a little bit of sciencing. Bear with me as we found out a lot of really cool, new, interesting things. I am going to start with a few of the basics to catch people up that don't know, but we're going to pretty quickly jump right into the main point of the video today, which is what is the best way to oxidize copper quickly? If you like these sorts of videos, please subscribe to the channel, press the like button on this video, and make sure you turn on notifications. A lot of people have had their notifications turned off recently. Go look at your notifications, turn them on. That way, when a new video comes out, you're told about it right away. Let's hop in. Okay, so first of all, we're just going to hit the very basics about copper really quick. The things that you need to know. A copper block, which you craft a copper block by combining 8 pieces of copper together. When you place that block of copper down, over time, it oxidizes. It actually has multiple different stages of oxidation. Let me get all of them right here. So you start out at this stage, then you go to this stage, and finally this stage, the fully oxidized stage. And this just happens randomly over time based on a few factors that occur in the area. Another thing I want to point out really quick, it is always worth it, and really only worth it, to oxidize copper in this form. You don't want to oxidize it in this form. Why? Because when you take a block of copper, there's 2 ways to turn it into cut copper, which you can then turn into a lot of these other copper variants. Method number 1 is the crafting table. Never use the crafting table because you only get 1 copper for 1 copper. You only get 1 of these for 1 of these. This turns into that. But if you do it on a stone cutter, you put in 1 of these, you get 4 of these. So make sure you always use the stone cutter, never use the crafting table. And if you're going to oxidize beforehand, oxidize this, because then you could turn 1 of this into 4 of this rather than having to set 4 of these out separately and wait for all 4 of them to oxidize. Now, you can do like other people do. I know a lot of people, really good builders, that if they want to build with copper and they want it to be oxidized, they'll just build the thing out of the copper and then they'll wait for it to oxidize over time. You can do that, but because of how copper works, when you do that, you'll notice if you've done this before, it takes a really long time. So if you're impatient like me, or even more so, if you're like me and you kind of you need to see what the color looks like as you place it in to make sure that's what you want, then this is when this is going to be important, because you're going to want to pre-oxidize your copper. Now, here's the very basics about how copper works when it comes to oxidation. When you place a block of copper down, it does a check up to 4 blocks away. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is taxi cab distance, which basically means if you were mapping it out, this distance. This copper block, when it goes to try to oxidize, one of the things that it does is it looks at other copper blocks, or 4 other copper blocks in the area. If it sees another copper block in the area that is not oxidized, or that is the same or higher level of oxidation than what it is, then that will slow down the oxidation process. I've not seen a good explainer on how this works, so I don't know the exact mechanics on how it decides when to finally oxidize. But what I can tell you is the more copper you have in this area that is unoxidized or is a higher oxidation level than the block of copper that is trying to oxidize, it will take it longer. So what has this led to in making people do when they lay out a field of copper, a lot of copper to try to oxidize? Well, what they do is this. They put down a copper and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th block, they skip that 4 block distance. This is outside of the check range of this one. And they continue to lay them out like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you kind of make a big area of copper like this. If you've done this before, then you probably know the big problem with this. It takes a lot of space. You do a lot of counting, and it takes up a lot of space to lay out all of this copper, a whole lot of space, in fact. But I've done a ton, an absolute ton of testing to see how this process actually functions in the game. It started out because one of the members of one of my servers had a automatic copper oxidation machine where he just set down the copper and set down 4 pieces of gravel and then another piece of copper, and then pistons would move it around and eventually would move it into a big cube. And that got me thinking, is this really the best way to do this? Because he had this huge area of space that was carved out for this machine to only do less, like a half stack of copper, or like less than a stack of copper at a time. So it just got me thinking, okay, so how does this actually work? So I started to experiment, and I'm not going to go over every single experiment that I did with you, but just know that I did a ton of them. All of this was unoxidized copper at some point, at least a lot of it was. And I tested everything from putting just all copper blocks in a chain, to having the spacers in between, to doing it the way he did it. And one of the things that I checked was, well, what happens when you have an oxidized copper beside an unoxidized copper? And I'm going to show you guys exactly how much faster and better this is. But here's the thing. So you remember that I said that this thing will check 4 blocks away to see if there is copper that is the same or lower oxidation level than the block that's trying to oxidize. And here's how I think that it works. When it's checking this particular area, if it sees a piece of copper, if it checks a piece of copper that is more oxidized than it is, then it will actually move forward to that next stage. So the more copper you have around, the more oxidized copper you have around a piece of copper, the faster that it will oxidize on its own. And to the best of my knowledge, and I'll show you guys, we're going to run a test here in a little bit. To the best of my knowledge, this specifically matters for oxidized copper, not air. So if I set up something like this right here and waited for it to oxidize and did a little bit like larger tests, right, that had a lot of these set up, and I had this where it's just all air blocks, this right here will oxidize faster than this right here will, which means that while this may be the fastest way to get copper to oxidize, it's not necessarily the most efficient way. And I mean this in a couple of different ways. First of all, think of how you play the game of Minecraft. When you set up something like this, are you sitting here staring at it, waiting for it all to oxidize, and the second that it finishes, you go and break it all up and pick it all up? Or do you set this out to oxidize, and you go and you do a bunch of things, and you come back and you check on it, and you pick it all up? Most people do the latter. What I started testing with was more condensed ways to get copper. So I'm going to set up an example field of copper for you here. Okay, so I have 2 different areas set up here. The same amount of copper, 1 full stack, 64 copper blocks. Over here, the traditional method, the traditional way of doing it, takes up quite a lot of space to do 64 blocks. And then right here, the new method, the way that I've come up with to also oxidize the same number, 64 blocks. In case you're wondering what this is, these are bottom slabs and top slabs, and they're slabs. But here's the thing, right? Is these count as 2 different blocks because this is a bottom slab of 1 block space. This is the top slab of another block space. So this is getting oxidized copper around the copper that we are trying to oxidize. Number 2 is slabs are very nice and efficient. 1 of these will turn into 8 of these. So 1 of these oxidized becomes 8 slabs. So setup will not cost you too much in terms of having to get some oxidized copper to begin with. Now, this is a balance point that I have found, but you can scale this balance point up further if you like, because what we found, what I explained when we were over here, is the more oxidized copper you have around the copper that you are trying to oxidize, the faster that it oxidizes. So I tried a lot of different methods, tried a lot of different things. You could put copper on top, in between, down below. You could even put copper to the sides. The more copper, oxidized copper you get in the area, it will speed things up. But to a degree, at least from my testing, what I have found. So what I want to do is I want to show you here how this works. And actually, I'm going to add in, I think I'm going to add in another test. I'm going to add in this without the oxidized copper around, so you can see how much slower that actually is. And then we're going to run this and we're going to see what it looks like. Okay, so I have it all set up. And right now, game rule, random tick speed is currently 0. Oops, I forgot the E or the D. You can see it's currently 0. If you've never messed around with creative, you wouldn't know this, but basically random tick speed is how quickly these random actions that Minecraft measures in ticks. There's a certain number of ticks per second. Like how frequently the game checks to run that random action and see if it passes or fails. Okay. So the normal random tick speed in your world when you're playing in survival is 1. I'm not going to sit here and watch this thing at 1 because that'd be a waste of my time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the random tick speed up to 100, which is basically the same thing as fast forwarding time times 100 to watch this thing happen. And let's get a good angle here. Let's go this way. I do have it all loaded in a loaded area. So when I turn random tick speed to 100, I just want you to watch and pay attention to how fast these 3 different sets actually oxidize. And then I'm going to end this afterwards with talking about value and hopefully putting things in a good perspective for you when it comes to deciding what the best way to do this for you is. And here we go. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, that is definitely going faster. It is. On the very far right-hand side, it's not going anywhere. Actually, surprisingly, it's not changing at all. The far right-hand side is similar to if you were to just build in copper, whatever it is that you want to build. It's going at that speed. And then the setup in the middle, my setup, is a very happy, healthy in between. So what you'll see is on the left-hand side, we have several pieces that are fully oxidized already. It's going at a pretty good pace. Some of it is not oxidized yet. The new setup in the middle, almost everything is at stage 2, and it's actually trying to get, there we go. Once you start having some hit the next stage, then the ones around it will also start to hit that next stage because they see that next stage has been hit. So it all kind of happens in waves. So here we go. We're about 20 seconds later after I last talked. The left-hand side is getting there. It's almost all the way done. The middle one, it's having a lot of them hit stage 3 right now, and there's only 2 of them left in the initial stage. The left-hand side is almost all the way done. So what we can like deduct from this on average, to get a really full average on it, you'd have to run way more copper than what I'm running right here and have to run way more tests on it. So I don't want to say this is definitive in terms of percentages. The left side just finished. The right side is over halfway done. It is about 3/4 of the way done. So that should mean, I don't, correct my math, please, but the middle one, my test subject, is about 25% slower than the big spread out field on the left, and infinitely faster than when you just have copper set up in a build and you wait for it to oxidize on its own. So we could have made this faster. I could have placed copper above. I could have placed copper down the rows. There's a lot of things you can do to speed this up even more. I wanted to bring you guys an example that was kind of minimalist and proved a point. And I do think that I've done that here today. So if we were to fill this in to this same amount of space that we took up with all of this, we would be able to fit more than 3 times the amount of copper in that same amount of space. So when it comes to the way that you play the game of Minecraft and how it is that you're going to set these up, whether it be a manual collection, kind of like we have set up here, or if you're a redstoner out there and you want to set up a piston feed tape belt that pushes all of the copper into a big cube. Either way, this is the value proposition that you have to look at. If you don't mind working in an infinite size space that's going to take whatever amount of work it's going to take to clear out and set up, this is your faster way to do it for sure. It is. But only a little bit slower is this method right here, where you can, in the same amount of space, pack in way more. It makes it a little bit easier to just go through and click, 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 click to set it all down. And then when it comes to collecting it, you can just go through and collect it like this. Just kind of go down the rows and then collect it, and it's nice and easy. So regardless of which way you want to do it, that's going to be up for you to decide. I don't want to tell you that you have to do it this way, but what I wanted to show you was, if you do it this way, and maybe if you lay out some more copper in between and above or whatever, if you really want to like ultra optimize it, this way is almost as good as just laying it all out, and it's so much easier to do. And for my redstone people out there, if you make a feed tape with this versus a feed tape out of this is a whole lot easier to manage. You're going to be able to do everything in a much smaller space. And yeah, you might have to wait a little bit longer for it to reach its final stages before you put everything in a big blob. But this is going to get you copper overall, I think, a lot faster. I hope you guys enjoyed this more like technical video. This was really fun for me to test out. We did it on stream. So make sure you come join the live streams on Twitch at twitch.tv/Prowl8413, or here on the YouTube channel if you want to watch it here on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the like button if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of them. And most importantly, make sure you turn on those notifications so when a new video comes out, you get told about it. I appreciate you guys being here today. I hope you enjoyed this one. There's going to be more coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.